Hello, my friend, and welcome to the 573rd episode of the Sales Podcast. I'm Wes Schaefer, the Sales Whisperer, your host. Today, I'm doing another book review. This is on the Full Facts book of cold reading by Ian Rowland. The subtitle, The Definitive Guide to the Finest Persuasion Technique in the World and Its Use in the Psychic Industry. So I had Ian on back on episode 172, way back in early 2016. And around Thanksgiving of 2018, I met him in London for coffee. I was out there seeing my son. I was able to tag it onto a trip. I was flown out to Slovenia to speak, so that was cool. I wouldn't mind going back. But so I met this guy. We've been in touch ever since. We were in touch before that. I like him, his approach. He's written a couple of other books I may review later on. He is a magician and entertainer, but in business, he's a copywriter. He's a trainer. He uses these techniques to entertain. Okay, and in the book, he talks about just straight up, he can't read your mind, and he and I both agree that there's no such thing as a psychic. Now, we could get spiritual. I do believe there are evil spirits. I do believe people can tap into some things that they shouldn't, and that, I think, is some bad juju. But your typical palm reader, the person hanging out, getting in touch with your dead uncle or whatever, they're full of crap. And so the nice thing that he does in the book, and I may have time to get into it, but he talks about how to how to block people doing cold reading on you. The old adage is, if you don't know who the sucker is at the table, like when you're playing poker, right? If you don't know who the sucker is, it's you. And all of life is sales. Your kids are selling you on why they should be able to stay up later, have another scoop of ice cream, play on the computer, go to a friend's house. If you're dating, it's a sale. Why should she go out with you? Why should she give you her number? In business, you want to get a raise. Even if you're not in sales, you're an engineer. How do you sell the boss on getting a raise? Everything is a sale. You go out to eat. You want to exchange whatever. One of the sides for a side salad. Oh, that's $1.99 extra. They're selling you. So you need to understand how to recognize these techniques, how to stop them from happening to you at a minimum, and how you can apply some of these to control the dialogue, set the mood, control the state of your prospect. It's how things get done, okay? If you have something worth selling, if you have something that will benefit your prospect, then you owe it to them, to yourself, to your company, to your family, to master the skills of persuasion, of negotiation, of communication, to stack the odds in your favor, to get the prospect awake, get them to pay attention, get them to see the true issue at hand and the benefits and the ramifications of not doing business with you. That's the role of a professional salesperson. And that's why I'm bringing up this book. Now, before I get into it, I want to go over a few things. I'm making some changes. I listen to podcasts as well. I've been listening to them for a long time. I started personally podcasting in 2009. And I was listening to them way before I started doing my own. So I've been checking these out for quite a while. I've got it's now a much shorter list. You got to control your time, right? But I'm listening to guys, seeing some different formats. Over these 9+ years, I've rarely had sponsors. I've had a handful, I think 4, maybe 5, some were like 5 episodes, some were maybe 10. I dabbled with one of these sites. I think it was Red Circle. I think they might have inserted some ads in the middle, and I didn't like that. So wanted to take control of this. But this is not a hobby, right? This is how I put food on the table. It's, been in sales since 1997. As soon as I left the Air Force, I jumped into sales. And so, I do this to bring value. I do this to stand apart. I do this to stay top of mind in your mind. Hopefully you refer this out. But it's how I put food on the table, And I say for a family of 9, the reality is, my oldest is out of the house. But my wife wants to buy him Christmas presents. Golly, when does that end? My second, he just got married, but he lives nearby, so he still comes by and eats. If y'all know how to lock a refrigerator, can y'all let me know? I want to maybe do like a retinal scan, or like the James Bond pistol that only worked with his fingerprint or the palm print, right? So I can grab the fridge and it opens for me, but not for my son. If you know of something like that, let me know. My oldest daughter, she's getting married here September 1st. So, golly, I'm recording this 2 weeks and a day. She's getting married on a Thursday, so that's cool. They're saving some money. The prudent thing. So, the reality is, I still have a family of 9, but I'm only going to have, my second daughter, she's away at San Diego State, but she comes back to visit often. So, in the house, it's kind of weird, actually. It's kind of nice, kind of weird that there's only 5 of us in the house every night. But still, got to put food on the table. Got to pay the bills. And so, this podcast has helped. I get leads and referrals. You buy my books. You click on some affiliate links. You join the Make Every Sale program. You join the Sell More of Everything program. Buy software from me. Buy consulting. So I appreciate it. So, but like I was saying, I've listened to some other podcasters, seen some different formats. I'm going to try this out for a bit, see what kind of feedback I get. I'll mention a few just quick blurbs on some tools that I use. So these are not even sponsors, right? These are just, I'm an affiliate. And some of them have been guests on the sales podcast and or the CRM Sushi podcast where we demo technology. And, these are cool tools that can help you sell. And the ones I'll mention today, some are just $15 a month. Another one's $97 a month. So it's not necessarily like super expensive tools. I don't sell something just because somebody will pay me an affiliate commission. It's got to be a beneficial tool. So, as I mention these, and as we move forward, I'll just make this more of a standard, do a quick intro of the guest, roll into a quick review of the tools that I'm recommending. Later on, I may do a little bit longer read of them. But as you get used to it, if you don't want to listen, you can fast forward, right? I'll try to put in some links as well in the show notes showing the timing of when the interview starts, because obviously I can see as I record this, so I'll put a little timestamp in there. So if you want to skip ahead, but in your player, right, if it's Apple or whatever, if you like swipe up or depending on the player, click on the notes, I'll embed the links, the descriptions to these tools, the links and info on my guests. And I've always had that, but this will be a little more thorough, a little more standard. Okay. So, with that in mind, so one thing I may not have mentioned on the sales podcast is my CRM quiz, bestcrmforme.com. Check that out. And actually, you know what? Scratch that from your brain. I keep forgetting. I've got several URLs, but this one came available when I got it. crmquiz.com. So it's even shorter. crmquiz.com. And now if you own your business, you can do this. Even if you don't, you could probably still buy some domain names and forward them to places on your company website. And if you change companies, you could always redirect it somewhere else, to the new company. But maybe it's your name. I own, the sales agenda and, westschaefer.com and, hirethebestspeaker.com. But you can get names and redirect them. And, it's $9 a month on GoDaddy or $9 a year on GoDaddy to register a domain name. But make sure you've got names that are easy to remember and that you can redirect people to, all right? And one day I'll remember that I have a new URL, crmquiz.com. So if you're still looking for the right tool, check that out. It's a multiple choice quiz. It'll give you some recommendations, and then there's a link to book a free 15-minute call with me to review the answers. I hope you find the right tool. I've had a donate button for quite a while. I just haven't mentioned it. But if you want to just donate to the Sales Podcast, hey, $1, $5, $500,000. Just go to donate.thesalespodcast.com. Buy me a coffee. I appreciate it. The Sales Agenda, I've mentioned sporadically, but it's a free tool, thesaleagenda.com. It's a video. It's a PDF. You can edit it. Well, you'd have to recreate it, but you're free. I give you free license to edit that thing, use it to take control of the sales. Like I said, if you don't know who the chump is, it's you. If you don't have a process to sell, I guarantee you your buyer has a process to buy, to negotiate. On my Monday call this week, one of the guys, he couldn't make it, but he was asking for recommendations on negotiation books. And I gave a few. There was one in particular. I took his class 20 years ago in person, and paid for itself. Doubled. I had a 200%. Was it 200% or 100% ROI? I don't know. I doubled it. Right. We spent like $2,500 on the course, and I literally made $5,000 extra on a big sale within like a week or two of taking that class. And I held my ground based on the tactics and strategies that I learned in that class. So I go over those live every week, not just negotiation, but when you have a question, I talk about it, we analyze it, and I give you specific tools on how to handle that. Okay, but thesaleagenda.com, it's a free tool that will help you start to control things. Okay, you've got to go in with an agenda. You've got to know how to open. You've got to know how to stay in control. You have to know how to close for the next steps. You may not close for the sale, but you've got to be able to close for what the next steps are. And everyone agrees to what the next steps are. Okay, so make sure you understand how that's going. If you want to turn lurkers into leads, get you some Leadferno. Leadferno.thesalespodcast.com. I had the founder on, Alan Wyke, just recently. And also then I had him on the CRM Sushi podcast. So very cool tool centered around SMS, but it does Facebook Messenger. It does Google Business Message. Powerful tool. And SMS is where it's at. Okay. He's got a free trial, so check that out. Leadferno.thesalespodcast.com. You gotta do that so it forwards, so I get credit when you visit that. Okay. Founders card. I just posted on this earlier this week on my Facebook page, but I've used them now for several years, and it's like a few $100, and maybe $400 or $500. I forget now, but I got it just to save on my Stripe processing fees, and it tripled its value the first year alone on that. And then I was reminded of this. They have a little Chrome extension. Okay, once you're a member, and I bought some Bose speakers just like 2 weeks ago. I got one sitting here on my desk, a little portable thing, battery operated, but like. Well, you know Bose, just that deep sound, so it's good for music, so for my podcast. It's because I swapped up my office. I've got a Mac Mini now. Had a 3-year-old. It was a nice iMac, 5K, blah blah blah, 32 gigs of memory, but it was the Intel chipset, and it was 3 years old. So this new M1, I think, is in the Mac Mini. I'm about to get a MacBook or Mac Air laptop, replace my MacBook Pro, but I bought that, and I bought like a truly portable, like outdoor speaker. Used it from my HOA meeting 2 weeks ago. But the founder's card popped up and says, "Hey, save 15%." So they had a sale. So I bought refurbished, and they had a sale. And then and I thought, oh, maybe they won't take that 15%, but they did take the 15%. And it was only $250 or something. But you do the math, it was like $40 that I saved just right there. But You save on hotels, you save on cars, you save on all kind of stuff. You save on Shopify. You get all kind of like bonus points and whatever as well on multiple airlines. I know they always run promotions on American. But check it out, founders.thesalespodcast.com. And I highly recommend it. Go check it out. Do the math. If you're traveling again, if you're buying things, like I said, if you're using Shopify, if you're using Stripe, it'll pay for itself. Okay? So get you some of that. Couple more, and we'll jump into it. So John Buchan, I had him on the Sales Podcast years ago, and he cold emailed me, and it freaking worked. So he talks about writing drunk emails. The old adage was write drunk, edit sober. But John, he wrote drunk, did not edit, and hit send. He woke up the next day like, what the hell did I just do? And he was getting business. And this was like from Fortune 1000, Fortune 500, Fortune 100 companies, right? Not just the local chiropractor, like big companies. They loved his approach. So now he teaches not just that, but a whole lot of things around copywriting. So, I've done copywriting for years. I do my own. He likes my copywriting, but I don't have a template. I don't have a course that I lay it out like he does. So check him out. I mean, if nothing else, follow him on Facebook. The dude's hilarious. But go to drunk.thesalespodcast.com. See what he's got. He's got templates on social media, templates on emails. The guy's a machine churning out tools to help you grow your sales. And he's just a good guy. Phone Burner, I haven't used it. I don't do a lot of outbound calls. I've helped others set it up. And it's run by a friend of mine I've known for many years. Used to host his Dan Kennedy meetings up here in my office. His name is Henry Evans. But Phone Burner, it burns up your phones. If you make outbound calls, check out Phone Burner. It integrates with all the regular CRMs. And it turns your phone into a machine so you can be a human when you get on the phone. All right. So if you're making outbound calls, try them out. burner.thesalespodcast.com. And the last one is SendSpark. So I just had Bethany on the Sales Podcast. We're going to go live with her interview both, on the Sales Podcast, and then I had her demo SendSpark on the CRM Sushi Podcast. So her interview will be next, episode 574, and I'll release the demo of SendSpark. And this is like $15 a month, a super affordable video email tool. Now I've had BombBomb on, I've used Bonjoro. Her tool has a unique little twist to it on embedding customized video email. Okay, and she helps you personalize what matters, and you can put little snippets like in the front, and then use like a regular standard, stock video for the rest. So it's a cool tool, and video will help you stand out. So check that out at sendspark.thesalespodcast.com. And I told a fib, one more thing, Clean13 with a K, Klean 13, clean13.thesalespodcast.com. I've known that founder for many years. I need to have him on the Sales Podcast, actually. But smart guy, you buy credits and you upload your contact list, and he cleans it. He lets you know who's bad. There are, they call them honey pots or honey traps, like Yahoo, whatever, Gmail. They'll hold on to old emails that they know like haven't been used anymore, and it's a honeypot. And if you're sending emails to those, then they mean that they know you bought the email, or it's an old list, sitting to cold traffic. And when you do that, your credibility goes down. When that happens, your account gets flagged. Now your deliverability goes down. And if you can't get an email delivered, you can't get it open. You can't get it open, you can't get it read. If you don't get it read, then they can't take any action. They can't buy from you. So get you some credits and go try that, okay? Clean13 with a K, clean and the number 13.thesalespodcast.com. So there you have it. Now let's get on with the show. So as I mentioned, I've had this book for years. I've known Ian for years. He shared a lot of info on his first interview with me back in, like I said, 2016, episode 172. But the book, it's a very detailed outline, but 6 main sections. Welcome to the psychic circus is the first part, and the greatest scam in history? ? Kind of provocative. Section 2, he gets into how cold reading works. Okay, and the setup is super important. Section 3, he has an interlude on explaining miracles. Section 3 is demonstrations from tarot to astrology. Another interlude on keeping an open mind. Section 4 is the blocking techniques that I mentioned. So making sure people can't play these little games on you. Some additional notes on instant readings, stock readings, mnemonics, hot reading. Can anyone learn cold reading? And then he wraps up with applied cold reading. Now, that's just an intro because he's got a book on that as well. But defining it, applying it, and in practice, he gives a brief overview on direct sales, business-to-business sales, management therapy, criminal investigation, criminal profiling, and the PUA community, which is the pickup artist community, which is quite interesting. And I've learned a good bit in that field. Got a couple of books. Actually, I may review those here before too long. I'd like to get the author on, but I won't share that yet. But I had Paul Ross on. He was one of the kings of the pickup artist industry, and he's changed his game. But I've equated sales to dating all the time. One of my main slides, when I give a talk, if I'm only using a few slides, one is the ABCDE system: attract, bond, convert, deliver, endear, and how that's different than a pipeline, different than a funnel. It's more comprehensive and more powerful. But on the dating equals sales pipeline, I talk about stages and steps and how you can skip one, maybe 2, but you're getting into trouble if you skip 2 or more, typically. But dating and closing sales are synonymous. So there's a lot that you can learn from that. But, he talks about welcome to the psychic circus. In the matters of religion, it is very hard to deceive a man and very hard to undeceive him. Pierre Bailey, from, I guess, his book Dictionary. So, psychic reading, we read about them in the Bible. So people who have tried to divine, right, to become part of the divinity, to connect with a higher power, to know the future. Men have been searching for that for millennia. So you've got to be careful with it. He includes a quote here. I found my reading absolutely fantastic. I really enjoyed it. Everything that he said was absolutely spot on. And everything that he said that was going to happen to me seems absolutely fantastic. I was very impressed, actually. He did a personality analysis on me, and he was really right. Spot on. Okay. So he says, the above is a real quote from a real person. However, the reading she had been given was a complete sham. I know, because I gave the reading, and there was nothing psychic about it. Instead, I used cold reading, the psychologically influential technique described in this book. So Ian is a well-known dude in the UK, and he is trained extensively across the United States as well, and really around the world. But he has been brought in by big companies. He's been on the news. He's been on major shows demonstrating his talents. Okay, but he always tells people, "Look, I'm not a psychic." So when he's done, he tells people how he does it, and people are still left impressed. So it's good and it's bad, right? It shows, I asked a question last week on my Facebook page or profile, how do you convince someone that they're being lied to? And I think really the unanimous answer, not even the overwhelming, I think it was unanimous, was basically you can't. Certainly everyone agreed it's extremely hard, if not impossible. And some people gave some recommendations, some nice feel-good sort of ideas, but the mind's a powerful thing, and sometimes it's so powerful it can't be opened. You can't connect to it. You can't get through the defenses. Once people think they know something, it's hard to convince them that they're wrong. So, and Ian just gives examples after examples on this. And he talks about our reading's beneficial. He's like, look, if you can help someone feel better, feel optimistic about a challenge that they're facing, he's like, okay, there's possibly some benefits there. But he's like, most of these people, they really are scamming. What are you going to do about it? Don't go. I mean, hell, go to therapy if you need something, right? But stop being so gullible, okay? But the point I want you to take away from this, get the book. He's got some very detailed examples, and you're going to have to practice this to understand how to use it, okay? But by using something, and most people have probably been to a psychic or a palm reader or a tarot card. I stay away from those people. But if you've been to them before and you see how they set things up, you'll start to understand how this is done. And you can gain some insight on how you can do it. Now, again, I'm not saying I don't want you to be manipulative, but you may be doing some things that you're not aware of, some verbiage that you're using that is off-putting. Okay, so again, I'm not going to give you scripts or anything to make you this psychic, but I want you to, at a minimum, to be aware of how you're seen, how you are perceived, the feelings that you're creating in the mind and the heart of your prospects. So again, talking about the setup. The setup is important. I talk about the sales agenda, right? How do you set the stage? Set the stage so that you're in control. So you're the one showing up asking questions. You're getting them, I call it close first, then present. You close on how the meeting will be held, how it will be an exchange of information, how you will show up asking a lot of questions, how you expect them to answer the questions, how you cannot give a recommendation until you have all of your questions answered. And then you both agree on what the next steps will be, even if there are no next steps. You make your money going into the deal. Professional real estate investors will typically walk away from the closing table with cash. They make their money going in. So, do you know how to set the stage? So, if nothing else, this book will give you good insight into that. How to be aware of the surroundings, how to pay attention to the other person. I think for our next book, which I'm going to do pretty soon, is from a guy that has spent 20 years in the Navy intelligence, training the CIA, FBI, many others, on kind of like body language, but deeper. So I've been kind of on a kick. I'm reading another guy's book. I had Steven Sisler on years ago, going through his book again. So I may just do several books in a row on reading people, on picking up the clues, and making sure you're not throwing off anything. You don't have a tell, right? Or at least you can minimize your tells to help you in this negotiation, in this persuasion process. So he gives the working definition of cold reading. He says it is a set of strategies to do with the psychology of communication that enable you to influence what others think, feel, and believe. The applied cold reading that he wraps up the book with, okay, is about applying cold reading to non-psychic contexts such as selling, management, negotiation, teaching, therapy, and almost any interpersonal situation where influence and persuasion have a part to play. So he says, what is a psychic reading? He says that at the junk food end of the market, there are instant phone readings that recycle lame preset scripts for every caller. He calls them conveyor belt miracles, all the way up to the 1 hour private consultations, right? That cost the earth and deliver heaven on a stick. He goes through some types, tarot, astrology, palmistry, graphology, mediumship, clairvoyance, psychometry, touching an object and claiming thereby to sense information about either the owner or events involving that object, crystal ball glazing, aura readings, intuitive readings, he classifies them by content, typically health or personality and character, or just some general topics. One-to-one in person, one-to-one remote, group readings, public readings. And he did most of his were public readings. And again, for entertainment. He says straight up, look, I'm an entertainer. I'm not a psychic. This stuff's a scam. So he repeats it. So, but, he says, look, they're people do it personally for fun. They will do it when they have a problem. And then he says corporations will do them. But he says this is alarmingly misguided and could lead to all kinds of prejudice and unfairness when companies use this for recruitment, promotions, or other things to do with the company's well-being. But they're out there. I remember there's a book called Lords of Finance. I talked about it a couple years ago now. I'm going to go look it up. But good grief, FDR would sit in his bed and set the price of gold. And one morning, and he's sitting there with like the head of the Fed, the head of the Secretary of the Treasury. He's like, yeah, it's going to go up 21 cents today. And they go, why 21 cents? He says, well, I like 7, and 7 times 3 is 21, so 21 cents. Now, he's not consulting a medium, but it just shows big people in big, powerful situations like the President of the United States can make some crazy-ass decisions for crazy-ass reasons. So be aware of it. Now, he says there are some popular misconceptions. This is not just body language. He does say it plays a part in it, but only a minor role. And I'll get into that in the next book. Really good book, talking about reading people and looking for clues. And it was deep. It was powerful. But he talks about shrewd observation. And again, he says it's a factor, but he's like, you don't have to be Sherlock Holmes to figure things out. Okay, and he says, look, there is more to the psychic arts than just smart observation. It is about seeming to provide information when in fact there is little or none to offer. Fishing. Now, he says cold reading can involve subtle ruses to obtain information. But again, it's one small part of the complete explanation. The art lies in the details of how the fishing is accomplished. Okay? You may have heard me mention this before. When I'm trying to get budget from somebody, for example, most salespeople will say, what's your budget? Literally just blurt it out. And it's rare that a prospect will be honest and just throw it out there. A lot of times they'll say, hey, money's not an issue. Money's no object. The rookie salesperson will take that to mean, this is a done deal. They got all kind of money. Usually when people say that, you got a problem. So how do you fish for budget, right? So I may come out and say, hey, have you given this some thought? Have you set aside a budget for this program? I'll specifically ask, And they'll go, well, yeah, I mean, we've given some thought, but, we've got some figures in mind. Okay, would you mind sharing them with me? Well, we're not really comfortable at this point. So you can take that one of a couple ways. Sometimes I'll do I apologize. And I'll go, what? What are you apologizing for? Well, clearly you don't trust me. Right? You've brought me here. We've agreed to meet. We've agreed to be open and honest with one another. Talk about what's going on. We agreed to have me ask you some questions. You would have questions for me, and at the end, I would make some recommendations based on what you've told me. But if I don't know what the budget is, how can I make any recommendation? Okay, so that's one way, right? Just giving it a synopsis. But the other, they go, well, yeah, we've given some thought. We've got some numbers in mind. Okay, would you mind sharing them with me? Well, I mean, look, it's going to be okay. And I go, so, like $10 million? I mean, I'll throw out a big number, right? Oh, no, of course not that. Okay, so like less than 10 million, but like how much less? Well, I mean, way less. So I start throwing some numbers out: 100,000, 50,000. Well, yeah, I mean, definitely under 100. I mean, yeah, it needs to be under 50. But I mean, somewhere, and they'll start talking. Yeah, in the 40s. We'd like to get it for 35, but we understand for the right product, right solution, if it fits all the criteria, it could be in the 40s. So, it's a subtle way of playing the game, doing some fishing. And that's literally what these psychics will do. You just don't realize what's going on. Because what he shares, the difference in a psychic reading is somebody is usually there for fun. They're open to it. Okay, so they're not showing up closed off, ready to haggle, ready to negotiate, to the death. So they are a little more open. They're a little less perceptive, I guess. They're certainly less critical of what's going on. And so you can get, they don't recognize the fishing so much. Now, once you connect with the prospect and you get them to open up, they will be in the same state of mind. Jeffrey Gitomer talks about people hate to be closed, but they love to buy. So if you are fun to be around, you're a pleasure to do business with, if you bring value, you answer questions, you provide case studies, you lead with value, you seek to serve, and you're fun while you do it, they will start to open up. Okay? So getting back to the book, he talks about vagueness. He says some people will complain and say, some psychic readings are just vague and generalized statements. So take that to heart. In your marketing, in your sales, in your presentations, specifics sell. So several years ago, I took all of the names in my CRM, and I was still heavily involved with Infusionsoft. So I had all of them in my database, in my Keep, or Infusionsoft or Keep database. And I learned, I saw this somewhere else, but I realized with Google Maps, and I have to go back and look how I did it, but you could upload addresses. And Google would plot them on a map. And I did that. And I had 2,355 names of people that had bought something from me or downloaded one of my free guides. Okay, and it was in like 28 or 29 countries. I forget now. So I put that on my website. I've helped, over 2,355 salespeople and entrepreneurs in 28 countries sell more, faster, at higher margin, with less stress, and more fun. And that didn't even count like the in-person. And 3,000 we helped at Dell just in a 10-month period, and on and on. But I had that specific. If somebody asked me, I could say, here's where I got that number. So specifics sell. So when you are vague, oh, we've helped dozens. Oh, we can help you save 5 to 10%. The average client, implementing our software solution, our software as a service, sees an 8.6, percent reduction in inventory loss or theft or whatever in the first 60 days. When you have those kind of things, it's much more powerful, much more convincing. Right? So if you're thinking, oh, what's this book have to do with me? It has a lot to do with you. This approach, and again, understanding how others do things, how people perceive one another. It's so important. And I've used an example in training quite often. What can an airline learn from a grocery store about sales and marketing, inventory? And at first blush, people go, absolutely nothing. They're just so different. You're crazy, dude. But, it's great to bring in people that are in your industry, bring in the industry experts, but sometimes it's good to bring an outsider that doesn't have the sacred cows that are blinding him. Okay? But an airline, as soon as they close that door, any unsold seats is lost revenue. Okay? Now, same thing with a grocery store. If they can't sell that milk, those tomatoes, that bread before the best used by date, it's the same thing as having an unsold seat on a flight. So those two industries should get together and spend a lot of time together. Okay, so when you can learn to connect big, wide dots together, oh man, the world is your oyster. The world is your oyster. So, section 2, how cold reading works. The power of accurate observation is often called cynicism by those who have not got it. George Bernard Shaw. I've talked about, hard rains coming. When I moved to California in December of 2004, I was like, a hard rain is coming. Now, I was a little bit early, right? Things didn't collapse till 2008, so I was 3.5 years early. But I positioned myself for it, and I wasn't a cynic. I was just like, dude, this is unsustainable. This real estate market is not good. It's not healthy. It's not right. Oh, you're a cynic. You're a Debbie Downer. Okay. I was a meteorologist in the Air Force. If I say it's going to rain, I'm probably wrong. But if I say it's going to rain, it's not because I'm a pessimistic cynic. I'm just reading the charts, right? If I know what the weather is and I can prepare accordingly, it's like, okay, thanks for the news. Thanks for the information. I'll go make a decision now. I'll conduct myself accordingly. So don't be a cynic, okay? Jump in here and apply this cold reading stuff. So let's discuss the setup. In the military, they tell you to ops check your weapons, right? You do that before you leave the wire, before you go and risk encountering the enemy. In cold reading, tarot cards, palm reading, whatever, sales, you need to ops check your weapons. You need to set the stage. I read a book a long time ago. I'll probably review it again, but it's called Winning Through Intimidation, Robert Ringer. And it's a much older book. And he was making his moves, I don't know, 60s or 70s. And he would fly in on a private jet with a crew, with secretaries carrying big old, IBM typewriters in the fold-up cases. And he was winning through intimidation. His setup was such that when he arrived on site, the prospects already felt like they were behind the eight ball. They knew they were dealing with a professional. and that set the stage. I talked about Orrin Claff. I had him on the show, and I reviewed his book, Pitch Anything. And he talks about frameworks, owning the frame. And what does that mean? There are different types of frames. There's the moral framework. It's one of the top ones. But basically, when two people meet, somebody's going to be the alpha. And so what are you doing to set the stage? Okay, when you go to my website, people are calling me now. I had a call today, and I won the sale. He found me. He hit my website. He opted in. He had to pick a time from my calendar. He showed up to my Zoom. I let him into the Zoom room, into the meeting. So I'm setting the stage, okay? And that's what Ian's talking about here. And some of these things are just specific to this field, so we won't go too much into it, but setting the stage, putting the client at ease. He talks about, what are the main themes. So in that world of cold reading, love, money, career, health. Then some optional ones, travel, education, and ambitions. You're not doing cold readings, but you are dealing with humans. And so those are common things. And even though you're in business, this is B2B, not B2C, it's always personal. Business is personal. So if you can just keep that in mind, figure out ways to maybe bubble up some of these topics: love, money, career, health. So you can talk about family or trips or vacations. If somebody appears to be in shape, you can mention that. Ask them, what do they do for exercise? What do they do to burn off stress? What do they do to stay in good shape? Maybe there's something visible around the office, trophies or pictures, Ironman things or whatever. If you come into my home office, you'll see an LSU sign, you'll see an Air Force helmet, you'll see Air Force memorabilia, you'll see my jiu-jitsu gear on the floor, you'll see knives and hatchets. So, you'll see a lot of stuff. You'll see a crucifix. You'll see a Brazilian jiu-jitsu mug. All right, so you can bring up those things. But, travel, ambition, or education and ambitions, you'll see my 2 diplomas on the wall. So those are things you can notice, and that's what these cold reading people are doing. They're taking notice of your rings, your jewelry, your nails, your attire. How do you smell? How is your hair done? What kind of makeup do you have on? They're looking at everything. They're sizing you up quickly. And I do that in the military. The Air Force Academy taught us, attention to detail. That never left me after, being drummed into my brain for 4 years straight. So I'm looking at people's shoes. I'm looking at their watches. I'm looking at their belts, belt buckles, jewelry. I'm looking at everything, taking it all in. Okay, so what does that mean? So how are you leveraging this to your advantage? Okay, how are you doing it? Look, this applies to a trade show. How are you setting things up? Are they coming to your office? Are you meeting them in person? What does it look like on Zoom, or a video meeting? Are you showing up on time? Are you making excuses for technology? What does it look like behind you? Is it cluttered? Do you have logos? Set the stage to be in your favor. So now he starts to get into some interesting things, some specific things. He calls it the rainbow ruse, avoiding the quantifiable, find flattery. The rainbow ruse, I like it for several reasons, but so here's an example, right? So he talks about it's a statement that credits the client with both a personality trait and its opposite. Now, a little parlor trick you can play. I've heard statistics that something like 80% of people have had back problems or are dealing with a back problem right now. So if you got into an elevator, literally, going through the airport, walking in through the mall, just somewhere you've never, ever seen this person, and you look at them and go, hey, how's your back? There's a 4-to-1 chance that you'll be right. Something's going on. Me personally, I haven't injured my back, but I'm always sore and tight from jiu-jitsu. And be like, yeah, man, I'm stiff. How'd you know? What? I go to a chiropractor, right? He bends me like a pretzel. So I can be bent by more pretzels, like more of a pretzel in jiu-jitsu. But I digress. So this rainbow ruse, All right, it says you can be a very considerate person, very quick to provide for others. But there are times, if you are honest, when you recognize a selfish streak in yourself. Are you going to use that selling $1 million gear to Google? Probably not. But I did sell $1 million worth of stuff to Google back in the day. And I had a lot of one-on-one meetings with a few key people that led the charge for me. I could have used individual things like this to connect with them. And I've never been that prescriptive. Some of these are straight up manipulative in the way that a palm reader might use these things. All right. But the reason I want you to think about this is also to block this stuff, to see when somebody's BSing you. You got to be aware, like, what did you just say, dude? Did you just say I'm black and I'm white, I'm left and I'm right and I'm wrong, I'm good and I'm bad? You just said you said I'm both. You said I'm both sides of the coin. I'm heads and tails. Like, what are you trying to say? So you got to catch these things. And if nothing else, if you've been playing little games like this, maybe you got some bad advice, some bad training, maybe you've been watching some bad YouTube, maybe you've been following some bad gurus online, stop it. Okay? Because not all of these are great. Not for a professional. Okay? So now he talks about avoiding the quantifiable. Again, this is for palm readers. This is for shysters. Because they'll get called on it. On the flip side of that, in professional selling, specifics sell. I actually just chatted about this on LinkedIn this morning. There was I'm in a follow a copywriting group, and this guy he listed a very specific number. They've worked with something like over 1,753 clients, and somebody's bashing that dude's brains out. Oh, why would you say that? Why would you say over? Why not just say, over 1,700 or almost 1,800? And I was like, because you're a fool. You don't know how the human brain works, how persuasion works. Specifics sell. When you can tell someone, I'm working with a client right now, we're pulling out numbers like 48% growth, 77% increase, something like a 5x return, 18.6 million. Very specific, because when you give specifics, so for a palm reader, if they guess and get something wrong on something specific, it's going to hurt them. When you're in business and you give specifics, it implies accuracy. It implies that it is something that is verifiable because it is so specific. So understand, again, you could read this book and learn the opposite, okay? Apply the opposite of what he's saying they do for your business. So moving on, psychic credit, that's a little more specific, but giving the other person kind of the benefit of the doubt, complimenting them. And you can do this in a way with your prospects, giving them credit for their technological acumen, for their comprehension of the subject matter. Compliment them for having a good grasp of the situation, and how maybe you're a facilitator. Say, look, I'm not here with all the answers. I'm here to help you find the answers. I'm here to guide you through this. I'm here to maybe see a couple of blind spots, and I always tell people, and it's the truth, right, that the answer lies within. Great teachers, great consultants help the prospect or the student come to their own answers. Because it's true, people don't change their mind. People discover new information. And with that new information, they can make a new decision. Oh, that's changing their mind. Yes and no. They're not just going to change just because. obviously they've got to be honest. They've got to be sincere. They have to want the best for themselves, for those around them, for their company. Okay, because sometimes they do have to swallow their pride and say, yeah, I was wrong. I was taking us down a path, but I found out something new, and I'm acting accordingly based on that new information. That's what smart, wise, good leaders do. Now, in this section, there are a few other statements he gets into, and you'll just have to get the book to see it. But sugar lumps, Jacques statements are actually pretty good. And also the frustrated talent, greener grass, and then the Barnum statements, and then a forking, Barnum statements and forking. So these are some interesting word plays, interesting little statements that could be used sometimes in a sales situation, in a networking situation, when you're trying to soften up a prospect. And, those right there, I think, are worth the price of admission, right? Getting the book, going through it. It goes through elements about facts and events, fuzzy facts, geographical, medical, a lot of examples, and which is good and bad, right? It's good because Ian proves he knows his stuff. It's bad because it's going to take you a while to learn this stuff, okay? But still, if you pick up a nugget here, a nugget there, go back and review it, skim it, jot down some of these, figure out how you can use them. Find the one or two or three that fit your style, your industry, your part of the world. And again, it's worth the price of admission, right? Ordering the book and going through it. But like I said, I'm not super prescriptive, but I've realized as I look back, I do things now. I've been in sales full time since about this time, like August, September of '97. I left the Air Force. So 25 years. And I had joined a couple of network marketing companies while I was still in the Air Force. So really going back to late 94, I started reading about personal development and persuasion and people skills, and learning about Tom Hopkins, who I had on the podcast, Zig Ziglar, Tony Robbins. So going all the way back to 94, so 28 years. I was very prescriptive. I was listening to Zig Ziglar over and over and over again. I say things of his now that I forget that I learned it from him. Same, Tom Hopkins talked about practice, drill, and rehearse. Practice, drill, and rehearse. I do things that I learned from him. Steve Clark, my sales coach who I've had on the show, taught me so many things. Anthony Parinello, I just linked to Anthony's interview, Selling DeVito. I'm doing some consulting with a client right now, helping her with their voicemail scripts, their email scripts, the whole cadence, right, of outreach. The Dream 100, which I got from the Ultimate Sales Machine, Chet Holmes. I had his partner, Ted Miller III, on the podcast. So I did, Oren Claff already mentioned. So I've gone through all these guides. I have taken the time, spin selling, so many things just beat into my brain that it's probably not accurate to say that I'm not prescriptive. I've just practiced it so much that it's second nature. So, but I'm never looking to manipulate anyone. If you've listened to this podcast for very many episodes, you've heard me ask multiple people, what is the difference between persuasion and manipulation? And it's always the intent, right? If my intent is to help you come to a new conclusion, help you overcome a blind spot, okay, overcome an obstacle for your own good, then that is persuasion. If I'm doing it for my own good, if I'm trying to get you to buy something that really won't help you, then that's manipulation. So, but again, I've never been like so prescriptive that I'm just going to get you nodding and almost hypnotize you into buying. It's never been my style. I've had some NLP guys on, and they kind of do that to a degree. I've had a couple of hypnosis guys on, Tony Lucero, but he doesn't do it in sales. But I've seen his shows, and they're fantastic. But, we're not getting that crazy around here, all right? But having a few little zingers, little things you can call up, add to your repertoire, and use in an emergency maybe. The blue car, the lucky guess, the three-part guess, habitual guessing, stat, fact, trivia, stat. He gets into some differences between men and women, theme and variations, cultural trends, childhood memory, which is an interesting one, words and significance, the anxious parents, the lucky job, folk wisdom, seasonal touch, extrapolation. Like I said, he gives a lot of details. So this goes on for a while. The opposites game, push statement, but the whole point of what he's getting to in this is giving information for the purpose of extracting it. Okay, so a good mind reader is doing this, and the prospect doesn't even realize that they're sharing information. Now, in sales, that is important. For many, many years, I was in high tech, and I had systems engineers working with me. And, they'd say, I'm not a salesman. Like, yes, you are. And even if you don't think you are, at a minimum, you could divulge information that could hurt the sale. So, because systems engineers are so analytical and logical, somebody would ask, well, can it do A, B, and C? Well, it can do A and B and can't do C. And you ask them, why'd you say that? Well, it can't do C. It can do 99.9% of C, and the firmware update is coming out in 2 weeks, and it will do all of C and half of D. Well, yeah, but sometimes those updates, they slip, so it could be 3 weeks or even a month. So technically they're right. It does not do A, B, and C, but they're just so literal, and then that could torpedo the whole deal. So I'm never saying that you lie, but how you deliver information matters. You need to read the other person. How important is A, B, and C? Maybe you only do A, B, and half of C, but you do D, E, and F. And the prospect goes, oh my gosh, you do D, E, and F? Well, we really would like you to do C, but yeah, D, E, and F are twice as important in value and twice as valuable as C. We can make by without C, or maybe we could patch this up, use this, blah, 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 and make it, wow, if you can do A, B, half of C, D, E, and F, I'll buy right now. So you need to be able to read the other person and understand how do you and your team allow information to be extracted from you, and how do you get it from the prospect? Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. Well, in sales, anything you say can and will be used against you in negotiations. So, like I said, go through this book, understand how you can apply these things, think through this. Like the airline and the grocery store, what do they have in common? They have perishable products. Once the door closes, boom, that seat's gone forever. Once that tomato spoils, it's gone forever. So get this book and understand how you can play these games. Okay, so again, he gets into more detail on extracting information. He talks about the direct question, the incidental question. Now, why would that be? Is this making sense to you? Can you relate to this? Does this sound right? This is significant to you, isn't it? Would you say this is along the right lines for you? If you see somebody's doing this to you, understand that you're being played. Veiled questions, very good verbiage here on this. Disguising the illusion. Diverted question. So you got to know how this is happening to you. He talks about the jargon blitz. and he's straight up, right? He says, look, this is entertainment. He is not a psychic. But he says, interestingly enough, I see we've got the Five of Swords, an important card within the lesser arcana, traditionally associated with challenge and struggle and affairs of the heart. What's intriguing is that in the same conjunction of the spread, we've already had the Hermit, originally one of the lower triad cards, and now generally regarded as indicating not only solitude, but also the accomplishment of personal goals. It's as if the cards are suggesting your personal goals are, at this time, due to take priority over romance. Does this make sense to you? So the jargon blitz sounds good. See, he's being very specific. The Five of Swords, the lesser arcana. Challenge and struggle, affairs of the heart. This conjunction, we've already had the Hermit, one of the lower triad cards. Solitude, accomplishments, personal goals. Remember what I said? Specifics sell. So he's giving specifics, and that gives him some credence. Now, in the psychic world, and he talks about this in the book, that the customer is typically very open-minded. They want this stuff to be true. They believe in it. So they're very receptive. Now, as a salesperson, you need to be careful on this jargon blitz. Sometimes in short bursts, maybe when you're giving a presentation, you're giving a talk, you could throw out a lot of deep things quickly to show that you know what the heck you're talking about. But then you better be ready, willing, and able to back it up. Like literally go back to the beginning, say, let me break this down for you. Because a confused mind says no. If you use a jargon blitz on your prospect, very few will raise their hand and say, man, I don't know what you're talking about. They'll just kind of nod, act like they're taking some notes. Maybe they do take some notes. Like, I got to go look this stuff up. But a confused mind says no. So they'll go, hey, thank you very much. That was very informative. We can tell you're a professional. We can tell you really love what you do. Man, it really came out. And you know what? I took a lot of notes, and we're going to take this under advisement, and we'll be in touch. You're going to lose them when you're trying to stroke your own ego by doing something like this. All right, so be careful with that. The vanishing negative. So Tom Hopkins does something very similar to this. And what he does, well, what he's talking about here, what Ian's talking about here, he says, now moving on to career matters. You don't work with children, do you? No, I don't. No, I thought not. That's not really your role. So the vanishing negative, right? Or alternatively, moving on to career matters. You don't work with children, do you? I do actually, part-time. Yes, I thought so. A strong affinity with children indicated. So how do you phrase things? So Tom Hopkins, he does this, and it's 100% legit because it's just knowing how to use words and steer the conversation. But he pulls one person up from the crowd, and he just sits them down. And there's a video I saw. There was a woman that came on stage, and he had a man off to the side. He tells the man, pick a card. Pick any card, write it down, and show me, and only show me. So the guy picks whatever, 2 of spades. And then he says, no, hold that. He says, you and I do not know each other, right? Right. No, we don't. Did we meet before this? No. Did we communicate at all? Anybody from my staff? Anybody? Did we discuss this? He's like, nope. Okay. So, but it doesn't even really matter, even if they totally planned it. As long as the woman, that's on stage, as long as they didn't plan it. And so he confirms that with her. And so, I don't even remember what I said. Let's say 10 of hearts, right? Let's say the guy picked. And so he has the woman. He says, okay, I'm going to have you pick from a deck of cards. So he says, we're going to talk about this. He said, so, in the deck of cards, a traditional deck, you have four types. You have the red and the black. So go ahead and pick one of those for me. And she goes, red. And he says, that's right. Now, between the reds, we have diamonds and we have hearts. Now, let's say she says diamonds. And he says, and that leaves us with, and she goes, hearts. He says, very good. Now, again, a traditional deck of cards, you have numbered cards and you have face cards. So please pick one of those. She goes, face cards. And that leaves us with, all right? And So she goes 10 or numbered cards. She says, okay, great. Now, in the numbered cards, we have odd numbers and we have even numbers. So she goes even. So, okay, very good. Now, out of the even numbers, so he just walks her right down through either that's right or that leaves us with, and you never see it coming. And he walks her right down to the number. And it looks like magic. But it's just knowing ahead of time, setting the stage, knowing how to control the conversation. Okay? So, this vanishing negative, if you get something wrong, do you know how to control it, how to rebound, how to bounce back? So just, it's all important stuff. He talks about reaffirm, reassure, expand. At this point, I want to move on and address money and career matters. You don't work for yourself, do you? No, I don't. First, establish agreement. No, I didn't think so. I got quite a clear impression that you weren't in that category. I don't think you're cut out to be one of those flashy, egocentric entrepreneurs with all that stress and hassle. Most of them never get anywhere anyway. And then the explanation, or the expansion. Anyway, the reason I sensed you work for someone else rather than working for yourself is that I see change in your relationship with your employer. Again, you're not reading their minds in your job, but knowing how to steer the conversation, give them a compliment, stroke the ego. If you get something wrong, how to brush it off, steer the conversation, get them where you want to go. And I've talked about the sales agenda, right? Thesalesagenda.com. Go get it. It's free. It's a PDF. It's a video. It talks about how to set the stage for a meeting, for a prospect, so you can control what the heck's going on. Ops, check your weapon. Set the stage, winning through intimidation. Can you see now how, if you've been just kind of winging it, if you've been not paying attention to these things, not controlling the framework, like Oren Klaff talks about, if you're not doing those things, you're just shooting craps. You're rolling the dice. You're just hoping, through hustle and thinking on your feet, maybe a discount, you can win over the sale. And I'm saying the more time you take in the setup and understanding people, knowing how to read them, knowing where you're giving off the wrong signals, it's going to help you make a lot more sales. Be a professional and dive into this stuff. Okay? The Sherlock strategy gets into really just paying attention. Okay? It's more than just guessing. Said rather than seen. We're deep into this, and we're still only on part 2. This is page 78, 79. More and more examples. The Russian mill, the Russian doll. Elements about the future, Peter Pan predictions, certain predictions, likely, unlikely. This is looking at part of the country, maybe even a part of the city that you're in, being able to kind of stack the odds in your favor. When it gets to kind of a guess, but again, it's some of these are little tricks, and he covers a lot as well he calls them win-win, how you can rebound if you make a mistake, if you make a wrong guess. So understanding how to do that, it's just so important. Watch comedians, watch when they do kind of an ad lib, right? See how they roll with things. You can learn a lot from studying stand-up comics. The video's somewhere. I need to go find it. I haven't thought about this in a while, but it was a good, 12 years ago or more. A friend of mine owned a comedy club here in town, and he's still a stand-up comic. He's actually traveling on cruises right now, so doing this. But he owned his own comedy store. He performed all the time at the local casino. I saw him multiple times, but he did a 6-week course on stand-up comedy, and at the end, we got to invite our families, friends, and we did like a 5 to 6 minute little opening mic, and it was hard. we recorded it. Everybody got to record them, and people complimented me. Got laughs, but the shorter the session, the more you have to prepare. One of these guys, like, I don't know, Ben Franklin, Theodore Roosevelt, one of those guys, said something to the effect of, if you want me to talk for an hour, I can start now. If you want me to talk for 30 minutes, give me an hour. If you want me to talk for 15 minutes, give me a day or give me a week, like a TED Talk, right? Like the shorter the time you have to perform, the more time it takes to prepare. Everything's got to be tight, wired, scripted. And you should aim for shorter meetings. The sale that I closed today was a 15-minute meeting. Now, I let it expand beyond that, but I set it for 15 minutes. So the prospect was paying attention to the time more than I was, because I knew I had a buffer. I'm setting the stage. Again, he found me, went to my website, used my link, had to be admitted into my Zoom. I was setting the stage and keeping things tight. So I recommend you, and I learned this really from Google. They've got some kind of like efficiency setting or something on their calendar. So like my default meetings are like 25 minutes instead of 30 and 55 minutes instead of 60. And so I took that to another level and made a 15-minute option. So tighten things up, okay? Stay in control of the time. Stay in control of the situation. Get the salesagenda.com. Get that. Follow it. And make sure you're in control of every aspect of the sale. Speaking of that, on page 106, he gets into section 5 of 7 of how cold reading works, and it's the presentation. He talks about cultivating feedback. You want to make sure this is a two-way dialogue, and ideally when you're dealing with great prospects, they should be doing a lot of the talking. Okay, so, but include some prompts to extract the information. Open questions are important all the time. That should not be news to you. Eye contact is important. Don't be looking around. Don't be on your phone, obviously. If you're on a Zoom call, it's tempting to wander. Okay, don't. Adjust your camera, move it where it needs to be so you can be looking at them. Like you can still see your screen if you got to look around and click something, but be making eye contact. And it's weird because you're looking at the lens of a camera, but understand the importance of that. Body language, obviously, when you're in person, pay attention to it. I talked about it with Chase Hughes and the 6-minute X-ray. A lot of nuances and subtleties to look at there. Actually, you know what? I'm just thinking about, I don't think I have spoken about that. Ooh, I'm trying to get Chase on the show. But I talked about it in our Monday group, sellmoreofeverything.com. You remember that, right? I don't think you are. Sellmoreofeverything.com. Chase Hughes. Good stuff. But I've kind of been on a people reading kick lately. But, be eliciting feedback. Use the feedback. I just had a guy on the show, Stefan Georgi. Got to get that right. He's done over $1 billion in sales through copywriting, so helping his clients, right, produce that. And he talked about his method, the RMBC method, but the research. He talked about getting into the mind of your customer and then giving it back to them when you're doing the writing and the content creation. And this is for everything from a landing page to a video sales letter to an infomercial to direct mail. And I've always done that working with a prospect. I'm taking notes, especially being remote. It's a little bit easier. I'll hit mute and I'm typing notes. And I've got a standard format for my proposals. That's why I win most of my proposals. I only send one out if we've already got an agreement, a verbal agreement. Now we're just putting things in writing and dotting the I's, crossing the T's, right? But when they're telling me things that they're frustrated, upset, concerned about, I take those notes and I feed that back into the present situation. I just use their own words. Anything you say can and will be used against you in the negotiation. So I'm paying specific attention to the exact words and the phrases that they're using, and I'll put that in quotes. So now I'm not having to convince them. They've already convinced themselves. I'm using their words. It's just much easier, right? But how to use that feedback, Ian gets into. So it's getting close to get my daughter in bed. School has started. Doing a little homeschooling pod. Pretty interesting. So I want to wrap this up, but I'm only about halfway through the book. And there's just so much information. And like I said, I've read this a couple of times, and I still reference it. It's on my shelf, very accessible. But he concludes with, how to apply this, how to use this in business. He's written a couple of books. So, and on the applied cold reading, it's how to do this in business. And like I said, everything is applicable if you just have an open mind and figure out the unique angle. And when you read books and work with experts outside of the norm, that's when you get the big breakthroughs. Because if you're using all the same coaches and programs and gurus that everybody else is, it's the red ocean, right? It's just bloody. You're fighting for scraps. I want an unfair fight, an unfair to my advantage. So get his book. Oh, and one of the sections towards the end as well is the blocking techniques, and it's not too long in that section, because as you go through all this, you start thinking about it, you start to identify how it's being used against you. So just being aware of the tips and the tricks, you can turn it around, and just don't let them do that to you. All right. So again, it's Ian Rowland. IanRowland, Ian Rowland. Look him up. He's over in the UK. IanRowland.com, the cold reading book. AppliedColdReading.com, and tell him that Wes sent you. All right, he might send you a little bonus. He does some cool stuff, but you have to check out his site to see it. All right. Thanks for listening. Go sell something.